And good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Captain Lou's Championship Years in Sports History here on 12 Ounce Sports and the Captain Lou Sports Network on YouTube. We wrap up the month of July talking about the year 2004. So we thought we'd go live tonight and kind of give you a rundown on all the champions of 2004 here this year. We had some great champions in that year 20 years ago already. Seems like, again, just time just flies by. So we're going to talk about the Boston Red Sox. We're going to talk about the New England Patriots. Who won the NCAA March Madness? Who were the national champions, the BCS in college football, Stanley Cup? Of course, we had a great interview talking about the Detroit Pistons with the coach, Steve Finnemore, earlier this month. So we got a lot to talk about here as we wrap up 2004 and the championship years in sports history. Tonight's show brought to you, as always, by tickets.12ouncesports.com and also brought to you by the official copy of the Captain Lou Sports Network and all of our programs here on 12 Ounce Sports, that being javicoffee.com. Make sure you visit Javi Coffee. If you love instant coffee or regular coffee, I invite you to check it out. And while you're there, use the promo code Captain Lou for 15% off of your purchase. That is javicoffee.com. A lot going on in the world of sports, as we mentioned in 2004. We're going to start that off here shortly. We'll talk about the Boston Red Sox right after this on Captain Lou's Championship Years in Sports History on 12 Ounce Sports and the Captain Lou Sports Network. Hi, everybody. Captain Lou here from 12 Ounce Sports and, of course, the Captain Lou Extravaganza and Captain Lou's Championship Years in Sports History. Hey, if you're like me, you love to go to ball games. Baseball, football, basketball, whatever, minor league baseball, especially this summer. There's nothing better than a Saturday night game, major league or minor league baseball, Sunday afternoon. I've got the place for you to go to get those tickets for those games. Tickets.12ouncesports.com. We are a ticket broker, which means we don't charge you the exorbitant fees that you might see on some of those other secondary markets. Hey, if there's a concert you want to go to this summer, tickets.12ouncesports.com. Use the promo code 12 ounce as well, and you'll get a better discount. Tickets.12ouncesports.com. It's that simple. Can't say it enough. For the best prices on tickets this summer, make sure you go to tickets.12ouncesports.com. That's right. With the upcoming sports season, football, basketball, and hockey around the corner, of course, Major League Baseball heading into the pennant drive. Your place to go for all your tickets is, again, tickets.12ouncesports.com. Again, welcome everybody to Captain Lou's Championship Years in Sports History 2004, wrapping up our spotlight year, if you will, here on Sports History by talking about that great year 20 years ago. A lot that went on in the world of sports, including an improbable finish in Major League Baseball with the postseason and the regular season in general. The Boston Red Sox, we all know the story. How many years they went since like 1918 as a World Series champion. They were knocked on that door a couple of times. Obviously, who could forget 1986 with Bill Buckner with the ground ball going underneath through his legs, causing them to lose to the Mets in Game 6, and of course, Game 7, they lost that. The Red Sox got back into the divisional round a couple of times, but then fast forward to 2003, they played their heated rivals, of course, that being the New York Yankees, and they lost Game 7 in that best-of-7 series to go to the World Series. Grady Little was fired. They brought in Terry Francona to be their new manager, and the fortunes changed, to say the least. They went through, and then, of course, trade deadline time came around, and just like what's going on now, and they traded a very popular shortstop, but it seemed like he was always unhappy and injured, and that being Nomar Garciaparra. They traded him to the Cubs. They got Orlando Cabrera and Doug Mankiewicz in that trade, and also they made a trade with the Dodgers to get Dave Roberts. How ironic is that? Currently, Dave Roberts managing the Los Angeles Dodgers. Well, the Red Sox they got into the postseason, obviously, took on the California Angels and made quick work of the Angels in 3 straight, winning that divisional round series. Then they took on, again, in the ALCS, the New York Yankees. The Yankees won the first 3 games. It looked like it was going to be a blowout. I can remember that series back in 2004. I didn't watch game 4. I figured, it was just a formality. The Yankees were going to go back to the World Series. It seemed like inevitable. And then in game 4, it happened. Trailing 4-3 going into the ninth. Mariano Rivera, lights out closer, Mr. Closer, Hall of Famer, first ballot, all of that. Walked Kevin Millar. Dave Roberts came into pinch run, stole second. Then they tied it. Then, of course, they won it in extra innings. David Ortiz with a 2-run homer in the 12th. They won game 4. Okay, the Yankees thought, all right, no big deal. We'll win game 5. Not to happen. Tim Wakefield came in, and, they almost blew that, but they ended up winning in the 14th inning this time. He got an RBI single from David Ortiz again. They won game 5. All of a sudden, it's 3 games to 2. Going back to game 6, of course, the Bloody Sox series, the Bloody Sox game. Curt Schilling with staples in his ankle. You could see the blood in his sock. Some people have thought it was all for show. I think they're doing that just to yank the chain of Curt Schilling. But, of course, they won that one to force a game 7. And, of course, David Ortiz, the ALCS MVP. They won game 7 against the Yankees, by the way, 10-3, kind of anticlimactic. But the interesting thing about that was at the time, there was only 3 3-0 deficits in any of the series and there was only 3 3-0 deficits that were overcome to win a 7-game series. The 1942 Maple Leafs against the Detroit Red Wings, the 1975 New York Islanders against the Pittsburgh Penguins in the Stanley Cup quarterfinals. And actually, there was only 2, because after that, it was 2010 and 2014, and it happened both in the NHL again. But you could add the 2004 Boston Red Sox to that mantle as they beat the New York Yankees 4-3. Then they went into the World Series against the St. Louis Cardinals. And again, they did something they weren't able to do since 2008 or 1000 since 1918, and it's win that World Series championship. So the Boston Red Sox won their first world championship since 1918, the first of 3 world championships for the Red Sox. Won again in 2007, and then, of course, in 2018 or 13 rather. So there you go. Boston Red Sox, the 2004 World Series champions. And again, getting rid of the demons, if you will, getting rid of the jinx, the hex, whatever you want to call it, making history in that World Series championship as they came in and won that in 7 games over the Yankees. Then Noah had no problems with the St. Louis Cardinals. So the Boston Red Sox were the 2004 World Series champions. Well, New England had a great run in 2004, that area. The Patriots starting their dynasty, if you will, getting it underway as they were looking to get back on top of the mountain in the NFL. In that 2004 series, 14-2 was their regular season record. And you look at, again, their record, they weren't the best team in the NFL or the AFC for that matter. They had the number 2 seed. That top seed went to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Ben Roethlisberger's rookie year at Pittsburgh. And all Ben Roethlisberger did was win 14 straight. An unbelievable run for Ben Roethlisberger and the Pittsburgh Steelers. But the New England Patriots, they had something to say about that. Crazy thing about that year, the San Francisco 49ers were 2-13, or 2-14 rather. So kind of ironic, a team that good was able to come back and win the World Series. So, a team like that, was able, or scratch that. I'm sorry, I got sidetracked. A team rich in history, the San Francisco 49ers were 2-14 that year. But let's get back to the New England Patriots with a 14-2 record. Let's go to the playoffs. In the divisional round against the Indianapolis Colts. That was a tight game in the first half, 6-3. Patriots over the Colts. Patriots able to get a couple of touchdowns in the second half, winning that one going away 20-3. The Colts, they had the high-powered offense by Peyton Manning. 49 touchdowns he threw during the regular season. And in the wild card round, they scored 49 points against Denver. But that defense, that New England defense, I think that sometimes gets underrated in that run, especially in the early part. They held that vaunted Indianapolis Colts offense to just 3 points. And so they ended up winning that one. So next up for them was the AFC Championship game in Pittsburgh. Number 1 versus number 2. The Pittsburgh Steelers, as I mentioned, 15-1 in the regular season. And it was New England 14-2 in the regular season. 11 degrees at game time. The second coldest ever in Pittsburgh. But it didn't seem to stop the New England Patriots putting up a 41 spot on the Pittsburgh Steelers. It was his first loss, that being Ben Roethlisberger, after a string of 14 games. And he was the second, and that was the second NFL team to go 15-1 and fail to reach the Super Bowl. That being the Pittsburgh Steelers. New England converted 4 Pittsburgh turnovers in that game to 24 points. They had no turnovers themselves. 24-3 was the lead at halftime. Never really in doubt. It was cut to 31-17, then 34-20. But then New England went back up by 14. Ended up 3 touchdowns before Plaxico Burress got a touchdown late to cut it to 41-27. That was the final score. The New England Patriots would go on to the Super Bowl to take on the Philadelphia Eagles. And that one was a close game. Patriots and Eagles were scoreless after the first quarter. Second quarter, both teams traded touchdowns. L.J. Smith got on the board for the Philadelphia Eagles. They're up 7-0. And David Givens, remember that name? Got a 4-yard touchdown pass from Tom Brady to tie it up at 7. Then Mike Vrabel, the tackle, got himself a touchdown pass, 14-7 at halftime. It was all tied up at 14. Then they went in, after 3 quarters, it was all tied up at 14. And then Corey Dillon with the 2-yard run to make it 21-14. And then they got an Adam Vinatieri field goal to go up 10. And that proved to be enough as they hung on to beat the Philadelphia Eagles 21-14, or 24-21 rather. And believe it or not, that was the 5th straight trip to the championship game that year. They were able to finally get over the hump where the Philadelphia Eagles to get to the Super Bowl, but unfortunately they couldn't cash in. And it's kind of crazy that, they end up firing the coach, and, the rest is history. 24-21 was the final score, culminating a Super Bowl win. Andy Reid, that coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, couldn't quite get over the hump to win a Super Bowl with the Philadelphia Eagles. Of course, later got let go, and then the rest is history. Signs on with the Kansas City Chiefs 3 Super Bowls later, a dynasty in the making there. But back then it was New England with the dynasty talk as they won their 2nd Super Bowl, the first of many, with the combination of Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. That one a 24-21 win over the Philadelphia Eagles. All right, we're going to take a break. We got more champions to talk about. We'll be right back with more of that. But first, you're watching the Championship Years in Sports History, a review of 2004, right here on 12 Ounce Sports and the Captain Lou Sports Network on YouTube. Welcome back, everybody, to Captain Lou's Championship Years in Sports History 2004. We take a quick wrap-up of all the champions in that area, some of the big champions in 2004. Of course, we talked earlier in the month about the go-to-work Detroit Pistons, maybe one of the biggest upsets in NBA history. Kind of one of those teams, they didn't have a superstar, but they had one of the best records in the NBA. 6 straight trips to the Eastern Conference Finals for the Detroit Pistons in that decade. Of course, 2 straight trips to the NBA Finals, winning the 2004 NBA Finals in a gentleman's sweep, if you will, a 5 games. They won it in 5 games over the Los Angeles Lakers. Kobe Bryant, Shaq, Karl Malone, Gary Payton. They were going to defeat the Detroit Pistons rather easily, but that wasn't the case. That was Phil Jackson's last game as a coach of the Los Angeles Lakers, by the way, in that run. So, I mean, Detroit won that one going away in 5 games. Of course, the next year going to the finals, losing to the San Antonio Spurs. So the Pistons were the 2004 NBA champions. And I invite you to take a listen once the show is over tonight. Go on our YouTube channel on 12 Ounce Sports or the Captain Lou Sports Network. Obviously, we ask you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, but take a watch of that interview I did with the coach, Steve Finnemore. We talked at great length about that 2004 Detroit Pistons run to the championship, their 3rd world championship. Kind of a ironic year because, again, as we mentioned with the Detroit Pistons, no real big names. They had Rip Hamilton. They had they had Ben Wallace. They had Chauncey Billups, Tayshaun Prince, Rasheed Wallace. Rasheed Wallace was probably the biggest name, and they got him at the trade deadline. But, boy, they all meshed so well together. Again, Larry Brown was the head coach as he came on and won that that world championship to help lead the Detroit Pistons. Other champions in 2004, the Tampa Bay Lightning won their first NHL Stanley Cup championship in an epic 7-game series against the Calgary Flames. Both teams made it to the finals. Tampa Bay, 106 points. They were the top seed in the Eastern Conference. They defeated the 8th, the 7th, and the 3rd seeds to get there. They beat the New York Islanders 4-1, the Canadiens 4-0, and a 7-game series against the Philadelphia Flyers 4-3 to advance to the Stanley Cup Finals. It would be the first time in franchise history that they would win the Stanley Cup Finals, or get to the Stanley Cup Finals, rather. And it was the 3rd year in a row a team made their debut in the Stanley Cup Finals, right after the Carolina Hurricanes and the Anaheim Ducks. Of course, the Ducks in 2003 and Carolina in 2002, when they were beaten by the Detroit Red Wings. For the Calgary Flames, they had 94 points, and they were the 6th seed as they beat the Western Conference's top 3 teams to get to the Stanley Cup Finals. The Vancouver Canucks 4-3, the Detroit Red Wings, who were in the Western Conference back then, 4-2, and then the San Jose Sharks 4-2 to make their first Stanley Cup Finals since 1989 when they won that Stanley Cup. That they were the first Canadian team to make it to the Stanley Cup Finals since the Vancouver Canucks made it in 1994. So Calgary won the opening game against the Tampa Bay Lightning 4-1. And then game 2, the Lightning returned the favor, winning that one 4-1 to make it 1 apiece. And then Calgary won game 3 to go up 2-1. They won that one at the Saddle Dome. But the Lightning came back and won game 4, 1-0. The only goal scored in the first period, Brad Richards on the power play, 2 minutes and 48 seconds into that one. Then game 5, the epic game 5, overtime. Oleg Sapkrin scored the game winner, 14:40 into overtime. They win that one 3-2 to go up 3-2. And of course, game 6 at the Saddle Dome. The Tampa Bay Lightning trying to stave off elimination. Calgary with that win in Tampa to go up 3-2. Game 6 at the Saddle Dome. It took regulation, still tied. First overtime, still tied. Second overtime, Martin St. Louis. St. Louis, 33 seconds into that second overtime. His 9th goal of the playoffs. Brad Richards and Tim Taylor get the assist. They win that one 3-2 in double overtime. They take it back to Game 7 back at Tampa at the St. Pete's Time Forum. Tampa Bay wins that one 2-1. Scored the first 2 goals. Ruslan Fedotenko got both goals for Tampa Bay. First one at 13:31 in the opening period. The second one at 14:38 of the second period to make it 2-0. Conroy on the power play in the third, 2-1. But that's all it took. The Calgary Flames and the Tampa Bay Lightning in an epic 7-game series. The Lightning were able to win that one and win that 2-1. And then, of course, there was the strike after that that went into the probably, I think it was right around the first of the year in 95. So Tampa Bay won their first Stanley Cup in 2004 with a big win over the Calgary Flames. 7 games in that best-of-7 series. It was an epic series. And really, that was the last one of the pre-salary cap era in the NHL because, like I said, they went on strike after that. The following season in 2005, it didn't start till January. It was like a 50-game schedule where the Detroit Red Wings went to the Stanley Cup final, lost to the New Jersey Devils in that strike-shortened year of 2005. So Tampa wins their first Stanley Cup in 2004. And an interesting tidbit about that Stanley Cup final is Bill Davidson, the owner of the Lightning, just happened to be the owner of the Detroit Pistons that year. So he won back-to-back championships. And I believe he's the first one and the only one to win, the only owner to win 2 of the 4 major world championships in a single season. Of course, Bill Davidson built that dynasty with the Detroit Pistons back in the late 80s, carried on through the 2000s. And of course, he helped orchestrate, set the table for Tampa Bay to win that championship in 2004. So interesting tidbit there is Bill Davidson winning 2 championships as an owner with 2 different franchises in the same year. All right, as we roll on here with Captain Lou's championship years in sports history 2004, the Masters took place like it does every year, right? And there was someone that just for one reason or another just couldn't quite get his first major. Well, that someone was a 33-year-old left-hander by the name of Phil Mickelson. Lefty finally wins his first green jacket and his first major of 2004, of his career rather, winning the 2004 Masters. Winning on the last hole with an 18-foot birdie putt to capture that. And you're just going through the Masters in that year in 2004. Justin Rose led after the opening round with a 5-under 67. You thought, wow, this could potentially be double digits, the winner. Maybe a 12 or 13 under. Names like Chris DeMarco and Jay Haas were tied for second at 3 under after the opening round. Ernie Els at -2. Big E, the easy E, if you will. KJ Choi was at -1 with the likes of Bernard Longer, 2-time winner, Colin Montgomery, Jose Maria Olazabal. Then after the second round, Justin Rose again on top, 6 under. Alex Cheka at -4. Olazabal at -4. KJ Choi at -3. Mickelson shot a 69 to get to -3. DeMarco was at -2 along with Ernie Els and Charles Howell. Then after the third round, Chris DeMarco shot a 68. Phil Mickelson a 69. They were tied for the lead at -6. Paul Casey with a 68. He shot 75 the opening round. Followed that up with 69 and 68 to get to -4. Then you got KJ Choi, Ernie Els, Bernard Longer right there at -3, setting up what would be an epic final round. But Mickelson stumbled out of the gate, shot 38 in the opening round, or the opening 9 rather, on Sunday. So he was, kind of stumbling around. Ernie Els was 2 holes ahead of Phil Mickelson. He shot 67 that day, a -5. So he was at -8, waiting. 280 is what he shot. Els stumbled out of the gate as well with a couple of bogeys, but regained his form. He had a couple of eagles in that round, one at 8, I think the other one at 13. Then Mickelson came on the back nine. Mickelson shot a 31 on the back nine. Birdies on 5 of the final 7 holes. Then it came up to 18. Well, first of all, on 16, he put his tee shot about 20 feet above the pin and then made the putt to get the tie. And then on 18, that 18-foot putt, and we all know the leap of victory for Phil Mickelson, 9 under, wins the green jacket. KJ Choi, he ended up in third place, shot a 69, -6. Sergio Garcia had a 66. He tied with Bernard Longer at -3. Some of the other names, Freddie Couples at -2, Chris DeMarco, Davis Love III, Nick Price, Vijay Singh, Paul Casey, Kirk Triplett, all at -2. But the winner of the 2004 Masters, of course, was lefty Phil Mickelson. He got his first green jacket, the first of 2, as he wins that 2004 Masters Championship. Well, we're going to take one more quick break. We come back. We're going to talk a little college sports. We'll talk about the winners of both of those championships in the men's or in the March Madness and, of course, the BCS. You're watching Captain Lou's Championship Years in Sports History 2004 right here on the Captain Lou Sports Network and, of course, 12 Ounce Sports. Don't go anywhere.
BetUS.com is the official place to place your bets and support 12 Ounce Sports. All you have to do is go to BetUS.com and type in the promo code 120Z and you'll instantly get a deposit bonus. This is America's favorite sports book. And remember, always gamble responsibly.
Sports is our passion. For years, we've connected fans to the game. But just like athletes and leagues, we must evolve and grow. This fall, 12 Ounce Sports is taking our game to the next level. Montana, we'll see you in October.
Yeah, some exciting news. Keep an eye on that. We'll talk more about that as we draw closer to October with that big lacrosse tournament in Montana, brought to you exclusively here on 12 Ounce Sports. Welcome back, everybody, to Captain Lou's Championship Years in Sports History, wrapping up our look at 2004. We talked about the Boston Red Sox, the Pistons, the New England Patriots with their dynamic runs, the Tampa Bay Lightning with their first Stanley Cup. And we caught, of course, a first green jacket for Phil Mickelson. Let's talk a little college sports as we wrap it up here tonight. The BCS National Championship 2004 was one heck of a year, actually. 5 undefeated teams at the end of the year. Well, remember, back in 2004 with the BCS, the top 2 teams, there was no playoff. Those 2 teams played for the national championship, and it came down to the voters, the coaches, whatever. And if you can remember, that's hard to believe 20 years ago already. The biggest controversy was probably for the Rose Bowl. Oklahoma took on USC for all the marbles in the BCS championship game. We all know that USC won. That, of course, was later vacated with the infractions that in today's day and age would not be infractions with the advent of NIL and whatnot. And, of course, the Heisman Trophy was vacated, one that, again, was vacated but then given back to Reggie Bush. So, but anyways, USC and Oklahoma played in the championship game. And, of course, USC won that one. And so they ended up getting the victory. And but probably the biggest, as I mentioned, the biggest controversy was the Rose Bowl. Michigan, of course, going to the Rose Bowl, winning the Big Ten championship. They were the BCS representative in the New Year's Bowl games, if you will. So then it came down, it was either going to be Cal or Texas. They got an at-large berth because USC went to the championship game. Well, Mac Brown, if you remember, got on and he politicked like there was no tomorrow. He'd be great running for president right now. He politicked so hard to get into that Rose Bowl game that they ended up voting them in instead of Cal. And I remember Cal's coach, Jeff Tedford, wanted to find out who indeed voted in that coaches poll, who they voted for. But it turned out to be one heck of a game. Texas and Michigan in the Rose Bowl. Vince Young, a coming out party for him. A late field goal. Texas won that one in a thriller, 38-37. The undefeated teams, Utah was ranked 4th in the country. We talked about USC. Some of the other undefeated teams, Louisville at the time, Oklahoma, Boise State. I mean, it was amazing, some of those teams. Iowa was ranked in the top 10. Georgia was 10-2. Virginia Tech was 10th. Cal, as I mentioned, they ended up losing in their bowl game, so they were 10-2. But again, a year where 5 regular season teams undefeated. Now it wouldn't be such a big deal with the 12-team playoff. But back then, when you only took 2 teams, it came down to USC and Oklahoma. Wasn't a lot of argument about that back then, though, if I remember right. They were the top 2 teams. But then, as I mentioned, after that, with the Rose Bowl, the granddaddy of them all, I think that got some of the spotlight with Mac Brown and his politicking to get them in. As it turned out, it was all right as they beat Michigan 38-37 in that Rose Bowl. Finally, let's talk a little bit about the Final Four and March Madness in 2004. A team that you haven't really seen that much of lately, Georgia Tech. They got into the Final Four as they ended up taking on Oklahoma State. The other side of that bracket was UConn taking on Duke. And 2 blue blood programs right there on one side. 2 teams, up-and-comers. I don't know if you want to call them Cinderellas on the other bracket, but it was Connecticut against Duke in the opening game. UConn trailed by 8 with about 3 minutes to go, if you remember. It looked like Duke probably was going to get to the championship game instead of Jim Calhoun. But then with early foul trouble, Emeka Okafor came back in. Boy, he had some big points down the stretch. 18 points. And that was enough to carry UConn into the championship game. And that was Jim Calhoun getting to the championship game. They're going to take on the winner of Georgia Tech and Oklahoma State. That was a nail-biter. Wow, that was a great game. I remember that game. Again, it came down to with 26, 27 seconds left. John Lucas was able to tie it with a 3-pointer. And then, of course, it came down to Will Bynum's, or his layup at the buzzer for Georgia Tech to get into the championship game, 67-65, with that win over Oklahoma State. Paul Hewitt's team taking on the Connecticut Huskies, Jim Calhoun's team. Okafor again was the story, 24 points for UConn in that game. Most outstanding player, Ben Gordon, 21 points for UConn. They're just too much for Georgia Tech, 82-73. That big win for UConn. And of course, they are the blue blood of blue bloods right now. Fast forward to 2024 as they won their 2nd consecutive national championship under Danny Hurley as they look to go for a three-peat in 2024-2025. All right, that's going to do it for another edition of Captain Lou's Championship Years in Sports History. I invite you to join us next Tuesday. We're going to have a very special program. Check the listings for our special guest next week as we're going to take a look back at another championship team in a run to glory with our special guest. But that's a kind of a surprise. We're going to keep that under wraps, but we'll unveil it to you on our social media channels before the show. But it's going to be next Tuesday live, 7 o'clock right here on 12 Ounce Sports and the Captain Lou Sports Network. All right, everybody, we hope you enjoyed that look back at 2004. Until next week, Captain Lou saying keep your heads up, keep your sticks down, keep your feet moving, and as always, keep your minds open. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you soon right here on 12 Ounce Sports and the Captain Lou Sports Network on YouTube. So long.